Thank you, Judge. We will start now the questioning. I will lead us off. Mr. Bluestone, let me just start with you. We'll just go down the panel. You are currently a violent crimes prosecutor in the United States Attorney's Office in the Eastern District. Tell us a little bit about the work that you do, the kinds of cases that you prosecute, and what you've learned from that experience.
Thank you, Senator Hawley. Being an AUSA in the Eastern District of Missouri has been probably the most fulfilling job that I've had. It was commended to me by Judge Grunder. And frankly, before I clerked for him, it was not something that was really on my radar. But as both of my home state senators are aware, there has been a violent crime epidemic in the city of St. Louis, in particular, and the area surrounding it. And it has been so gratifying to be able to do something about that. I prosecuted carjacking offenses, armed robberies, other gun crimes, drug crimes, have been involved in white-collar investigations as well, and the work is extremely rewarding. I will say I fully appreciate the importance of every single case that would come before my court if I were so fortunate to be confirmed. Having seen probably north of 100 cases myself, it's incredibly significant to the defendants who would be appearing before me, the victims, their families, law enforcement who were involved. And I take that responsibility very seriously now, and I would then too. I would also note that in addition to being a violent crimes prosecutor, I also serve as our district's appellate chief. So I handle my own cases certainly, but also am responsible for overseeing every appeal, both civil and criminal, that comes through our office.
Is it safe to say, Mr. Bluestone, given your experience as a federal prosecutor, the volume of cases that you've seen and handled, that you know your way around a courtroom?
I would like to think so.
We would like to think so too.
Supervised more than 1,000 cases, and as I mentioned, handled more than 100 of my own.
Fantastic. Mr. Devine, let's talk a little bit about your experience. You are the Solicitor General of the state of Missouri. If you had to ballpark it, this may be tough, but if you had to ballpark it, how many cases would you say that you have litigated just in your role as a Solicitor General? You were Deputy Solicitor General for several years, but let's just leave that to one side. Just as SG, how many cases did you get?
I mean, it would be impossible to know. It's in the hundreds of cases that I have supervised or personally litigated myself. As Solicitor General, I oversee the appeals for 200 attorneys in the office. We're getting a lot of appeals that are coming through that we're supervising on a daily basis. I also have a second job, not just Solicitor General, but also the Director of Special Litigation. And so I'm in charge of the unit, the trial unit, that is tasked with taking some of the most complicated matters that the state of Missouri is dealing with and taking those matters to court, to trial court especially.
So in these dual roles, you have represented the state of Missouri in trial courts.
That's right.
And in appellate courts.
That's right.
And in the state Supreme Court.
That's right.
And in the United States Supreme Court.
That's right.
You've handled some of the office's most complex matters, most complex litigation. Give us one example of a piece of complex litigation that you have handled and what you learned from it.
Yeah, I think the student loans cases that the office argued, we've now had 3 of those cases during the previous administration. Those were very, very quick cases. The administration at the time was trying to cancel hundreds of billions of dollars in student loans. We felt that that was unlawful. There wasn't any statutory basis for that. The courts ultimately agreed with us in all those cases. But it was a very, very quick moving thing, and we needed to move quickly to ensure that there wasn't permanent irreparable harm. So one thing we did in one of those cases, we actually sued before the rule had been published, which is a pretty novel thing to do, and we were able to come up with an interesting argument that ultimately prevailed in court for why we were able to do that. We showed that there was irreparable harm. $200 billion was about to go out the door, and we ultimately prevailed in that litigation.
And your success record is hard to argue with. I mentioned it in my opening statement, what you have won in judgments for the state of Missouri through the litigation you've handled totals in the hundreds of billions if you add it all up. I mean, is that correct?
That's right. I think about $700 billion.
$700 billion. That's pretty good, General Bailey. That's pretty good. Ms. Lanahan, in my expiring moments here, let me just ask you to say a word about your extensive and varied legal career. You're the principal deputy Solicitor General now for the state of Missouri. If you had to ballpark, how many cases would you guess that you have handled in trial courts, appellate courts? Put them all together. I mean, what would it be?
Certainly upwards of 50, and I have also been in charge of many of the appeals in our office. I oversee directly at least 1/4 of the appeals, and I review them before they are sent in, and I've been doing that for the last 4 years or so. And we have numerous appeals out of many groups. So that's employment law. And you have to remember that when you're doing an appeal, you're not only dealing with the trial court issues and whether what the trial court got it right, but also the appellate issues, which is a whole nother layer of separate issues on top.
Very good. Well, Judge Stevens, I wanted to ask you a whole bunch of extremely difficult questions that would have really been impossible to answer, but I'll leave that to Senator Schmidt. But first, Senator Durbin.